What if a TV show could blur the line between journalism and entertainment, becoming a cultural phenomenon in the process? Welcome to the world of Primetime. Leah here, feeling excited about this one today.
And I'm Garrett, eager to dig into the world of television journalism and, where ethics meet primetime schedules.
Laid back learning with Leah and Garrett, and today the spotlight is on a film called Primetime.
Primetime, the upcoming film we're unpacking today. Quick story. Years ago, I watched To Catch a Predator, the TV news segment where adults who thought they were meeting a minor were led into sting houses and confronted on camera by the host. It was intense and honestly pretty uncomfortable, but it made me curious about media ethics. How do you film something that's serious without crossing lines around privacy or due process? That curiosity stuck with me and kind of set the hook for this whole conversation.
So, basics first. Primetime is an upcoming American biographical psychological crime thriller. Biographical just means it draws from real people and events, and psychological thriller means the tension leans on character minds and moral stress rather than big action. It is directed by Lance Oppenheim, who is making his narrative feature debut. He's known for visually rich documentaries and is stepping into scripted storytelling. The film digs into the origins of that TV segment Garrett mentioned, To Catch a Predator, and frames the behind-the-scenes pressures that turned a risky idea into a lightning rod.
Quick definition. To Catch a Predator was a U.S. news magazine segment built around sting houses. A sting house is basically a controlled location where producers and often law enforcement coordinate to expose people who believed they were meeting a minor. The host was Chris Hansen, a journalist known for those on-camera confrontations. That setup, for better or worse, creates built-in suspense and a maze of legal and ethical protocols. Primetime explores how that machine got built and run.
Rolling into the deeper story. Back in October 2024, the film was announced with Lance Oppenheim directing from a script by Ajaan Singh. Singh is the writer shaping the narrative blueprint here. A24 is financing and distributing, an American company known for backing distinctive, auteur-driven films. At that announcement, Robert Pattinson was attached as a producer. Pattinson is the actor from a lot of major films, and his early role behind the camera helped set the project's path. Also on the producing team is Ari Aster, the filmmaker behind several high-profile psychological dramas. His presence suggests a taste for moral complexity.
Then, it evolved. Pattinson ultimately took on the lead role too, playing Chris Hansen, while still producing. That dual job can align the performance with the bigger creative direction. Basically, the same person helping steer the ship is also steering the character. The film zeroes in on 2006 in its in-story timeline, when this format was crystallizing on American TV and tabloid instincts started to collide with investigative reporting. That timestamp matters because it frames the early rules of the road and the pressure everyone felt to make something headline-grabbing yet defensible.
Festival plan is bold. The world premiere is scheduled for Venice in September 2026 in the main competition at the Venice International Film Festival. Venice is one of the big 3 film festivals, and main competition means it is up for the Golden Lion, which is the top prize there. That is a strong prestige signal. After that, a U.S. theatrical release is set for September 2026, with A24 handling domestic distribution.
On the making of it, principal photography kicked off in February 2025 in New Orleans under the working title Bluefin Tuna. A working title is a temporary name used to keep the shoot lower profile and smooth things like permits or crowds. In March 2025, Pattinson was spotted filming with Phoebe Bridgers, Merritt Wever, and Sean Bridgers. Quick IDs. Phoebe Bridgers is an indie musician crossing into acting here. Merritt Wever is an acclaimed actor, playing the producer who runs point for Hansen, and Sean Bridgers is a character actor seen in a lot of tense dramas. The shoot wrapped in March 2025, under 2 months, which suggests very tight planning and a performance-forward approach.
The ensemble is textured. Skylar Gisondo, who many know from sharp comedic roles, plays Dan Plum, a young aspiring actor hired as a decoy for sting operations. His casting was revealed in September 2025 during post-production. That role opens a window into performance pressure and ethical gray zones, because a decoy has to be convincing but also protected. Anna Faris plays Mary Joan Hansen, Chris Hansen's wife, which grounds the story in domestic stakes. Tony Revolori, often cast in youthful or lighter roles, appears as a child predator caught on the show, which is deliberately against type and amps up the dissonance. Also in the mix are Matthew Maher, Bokeem Woodbine, Jonathan Lipnicki, Creed Bratton, and Alex Winter, familiar faces who can color both newsroom and Sting House worlds. And the score is by Ari Belusian, a composer known for weaving psychological unease with rhythmic momentum, which fits a procedural meets character study vibe.
Ethically, the film is walking a tightrope. You have privacy concerns, meaning people's personal information and dignity, consent questions, meaning who agreed to be recorded and under what terms, and due process, which is the idea that legal judgment belongs to courts, not TV edits. The strength of a dramatization like this depends on showing the protocols, who reviews chat logs, how law enforcement coordinates, and where safety lines are drawn for crews and decoys. If Primetime maps that process clearly, it can ask real questions without turning pain into spectacle.
And it is explicitly about media making. It probes how a show can live at the edge of public interest and sensationalism. Sensationalism is when storytelling leans on shock to grab attention, sometimes at the cost of fairness. A meta-touch here is Jeff Zucker appearing as himself. He is a well-known television executive, and bringing in a real figure from news leadership grounds the executive-level decision-making in a recognizable hierarchy. That choice invites us to think about who greenlights these ideas and why.
Release plan looks global and staggered. Venice in September 2026 to build critical momentum. Then theatrical openings in France and Germany in September 2026, the United States in September 2026, and the Benelux region in October 2026. Staggered means each market opens on a date that fits local calendars while riding earlier buzz. In India, Lionsgate Play announced it as part of a theatrical first slate in September 2026, which means cinemas get priority before streaming windows. That strategy matches A24's tendency to build word of mouth through theaters and festivals.
Put together, it sounds like Lance Oppenheim is blending his documentary instincts with thriller craft. You get the process and verisimilitude, which just means a feeling of realness, but with character pressure and pacing. The compact shoot hints at contained spaces and performance density, like control rooms and kitchens instead of car chases. That can make the moral questions feel close to the skin. Here is a thorny question to sit with. How does the portrayal of these sting operations shape how people think about justice and journalism? If a show or a film makes confrontation feel like the climax, does that tilt the public toward trial by camera?
My read is that public accountability can have real benefits. Seeing a clear pattern of predatory behavior laid out when it is documented and corroborated can help communities understand the issue and push institutions to act. There is also a deterrent effect, at least potentially. The idea that someone might be recorded can make a would-be offender think twice. But that only works ethically if the show is transparent about its methods, careful with IDs until charges are filed, and explicit that exposure is not the same as conviction. Otherwise, it bleeds into punishment without process.
I hear that. My worry is the slope toward spectacle. When cameras roll, the priority can shift to producing a dramatic arc. That can push editing choices that oversimplify, or it can encourage risky setups that look good but compromise safety or fairness. Also, privacy. Even blurring someone's face does not necessarily protect families or workplaces from fallout once details spread. Why should a news program or a film retelling it get to frame someone's worst moment before a court weighs in?
Totally fair. I think the line you are drawing is between documenting behavior and declaring a verdict. If a film like Primetime shows the checks and the messy debates, it can model restraint. For instance, laying out how producers confirm identities, consult legal teams, and coordinate with police without turning that into gotcha TV. If viewers see the deliberation, they may come away respecting process rather than just the rush of a confrontation.
Another angle is the people doing the decoy work. Skylar Gisando's character, Dan Plum, is an aspiring actor hired to play a role in high-stakes encounters. That is performance meeting risk. If decoys feel pressure to keep someone talking for the camera, does that affect safety? And what about psychological aftershocks for crew and performers? Does the film address care and debriefing?
That is where I hope Merritt Wever's producer character becomes the conscience of the operation. A producer in that seat is the nerve center, juggling editorial goals with logistics and safety. If the film lets us live in her decisions, it can show small choices with big stakes: when to pull the plug, who gets looped in, how far to push an interview. If audiences watch that calculus, maybe the takeaway is less about spectacle and more about the ethics of workflow.
So we land on a shared uncertainty. This kind of story can clarify or can distort. It rests on whether Primetime frames exposure as a tool for public interest or as content chasing a spike. That tension is why I'm curious to see how Oppenheim threads it.
In pop culture terms, Primetime connects directly to a show a lot of people recognize, To Catch a Predator, and it even brings in Jeff Zucker, a real TV executive, as himself. That cameo ties the drama to actual decision rooms. It is like pulling back the curtain on how top-level priorities trickle down to what ends up on air.
And it sits beside films like Spotlight or Nightcrawler, in the sense that it examines media ethics, though each takes a different angle. Spotlight is investigative process and institutional accountability. Nightcrawler is the thrill and danger of crime footage culture. Primetime seems poised to ask where journalism ends and entertainment begins, right at the moment of confrontation. What if Primetime had skipped Venice and gone straight to streaming? Streaming first can make a project feel like a genre thriller rather than a prestige contender. Without that festival spotlight, the early framing might be more about clicks and rankings than critical conversation. Awards bodies also tend to pay attention to films that pass through major festivals. Skipping that runway could narrow those prospects.
Yeah, and Venice specifically offers international press and the Golden Lion competition context. Losing that stage probably shifts coverage from long-form features to shorter blurbs, and the narrative becomes recommendation algorithms instead of critic roundtables. The upside of streaming first is instant global access. People could watch right away. But the downside is missing the slow build that A24 often uses, where festival applause turns into must-see energy by theatrical release.
It also changes the vibe of discovery. A theatrical first path invites that communal, focused experience, especially for a tense conversation-starting story. Straight to streaming might flatten it into background viewing, which could blunt the ethical questions rather than spotlight them.
Either way, the ideas are going to spark conversations. The route just shapes who hears them first and how loud they echo.
Stay curious. Primetime premieres in Venice in September 2026 and opens in the US later that month with a staggered rollout abroad. I am ready to see how it navigates the line it draws.
Looking forward to it. Until next time.